Everything just literally almost fell apart. So we're on a good note, everybody. That was absolutely ridiculous. I'm so glad that we didn't go live before my phone fell over and I fell over and the webcam fell over and all of that nonsense. So today is a good day. Welcome to another round of Astro-Babble, where we are going to feature 8 charts for those of you who have submitted your birth date, place, and time to me via private message. And we are going to talk about the different planetary placements in these 8 charts, teach you a little bit about astrology along the way, have some fun laughs, get a little bit of kiki going, and start our morning off right with a little bit of star talk. So let's pop open a fizzy water and get to it. So we're going to start with Grace. So let's take a gander at Grace's chart, shall we? So Grace was born 10:16 a.m. 10:16 a.m. in Westwood. Yes, Westwood. Ooh, interesting. So we have a Capricorn ascendant, Mercury in Capricorn, Neptune in Capricorn, Uranus in Capricorn, all in the first house of self. So when we have multiple planets stacked inside a house, that intensifies the energy of that sign dynamic in the person's chart, which is really interesting in this chart because we have the moon in Libra, the next sign over, and the sun in Sagittarius, one sign before that. So in this case, Grace might even be told, hey, you should read for Sagittarius. But because we have 4 different planetary placements, one of them being the ascendant, which is the helm of the chart, the most important part of the chart, in my opinion, we really have a lot of Capricorn. So there are tremendous Capricorn tendencies in Grace's chart, especially with Saturn in Libra being co-present with her moon in the second house. I think that we need to understand how much of a Capricorn she actually is. However, different things need to be addressed with that. Venus in Capricorn, I can appreciate, but I don't necessarily enjoy. It gives a little bit too much sternness to the feminine energy of Venus, and especially when Venus would conjoin the ascendant, there would be a lot of affection, there would be a lot of beauty, there would be a lot of appreciation for those things that make you just go all warm and cuddly. Capricorn tones that down tremendously. So when we look at that Venus being expressed in a Capricornian way so close to the ascendant, there's a sense of needing to put boundaries unnecessarily because of what's happening in the mind, to block unneeded or unnecessary affection because there is almost a feeling of unworthiness or letting down of one's guard because one is being too sensitive. Especially with that Neptune in Capricorn, Uranus in Capricorn, those expressions are very otherworldly. Those expressions are very much in tune with the essence that is are the other planes of existence. But when we have them all in Capricorn, that sign of density, restriction, hyper-focused achievement, all of their like Uranian unpredictability and Neptunian fantasy realm stuff and Venusian just physical affection and love and appreciation for the material, all of that kind of goes down the chute. And in fact, it goes down the chute in this way in Grace's chart, because we have the moon in Libra in the second house of finance, and Saturn is here ruling the chart. Money is the priority. And when we say money, second house doesn't just mean finance, it also means time, it also means energy, it also means all those things that really help us to navigate the physical world. And with that Saturn ruling the chart and the moon in Libra being here as well, Libra moon constantly trying to emotionally balance all the sides of the situation, play devil's advocate all the time, and also bring forward this idea with the first house stuff of, can I pay for this? Can I pay for this in energy? Can I pay for this in time? Can I pay for this in physical resources like money? Or is this worth my time? And sometimes there is a strategic value, Grace, to cuddling up on the couch and doing nothing. FYI, in case you weren't aware of that, because that is an important part of life, enjoying things for once, as opposed to weighing the consequences of every single action that you take. Sometimes it's important to invest in the people, not necessarily the end result or the bottom line numbers. So just keep that in mind. As a side note, Saturn in your chart will mature around age 30. You're actually coming up to your Saturn return soon. I'm sorry, I've been saying Libra, moon in Libra. We're talking about the moon in Aquarius, which is the sign that comes after Capricorn. Just kidding. When we look at your Saturn return coming up next year, sometime we're going to see a maturation of the chart in a way that really helps to soften some of these astringing tendencies that Capricorn has placed on your first house, especially because we have the Sun in Sagittarius in the 12th, as well as the North Node. One of the things that you're really going to battle is that self esteem and self confidence and self worth issue that really is like this life you've chosen to face your shadow, especially with this Mercury stationed in Scorpio, as well as co-present 1 degree away from that Pluto in Scorpio up in the 11th house of friendships where the MC is. Yeah, like part of your mission this time around is to go deep into the touchy feelies, and to really understand what it means to be soft, to be vulnerable, to be a witness to life experience that is not necessarily pleasant, and a lot of that on the internal realms of self. Even when it comes to work, like you've got this Gemini sixth house being ruled by Mercury in Scorpio in the 11th. Like you realize that whatever you do, it's not necessarily about the action that you do for work. It's actually about the people that are involved. And that can be a really tricky lesson to learn too, because in a work environment, sometimes those bridges that you make between friends and those enemies that you make and bridges that you burn have a large impact on where you move work-wise in a particular company. So that's something that needs to be handled. I think it's also something rather interesting that you choose spouses that are very rooted in the touchy-feely space. Tend to be attracted to that when it comes to that Mars in Cancer retrograde in the second being ruled by the moon in the second. I think something that you'll learn from your spousal choices and the people who you choose to be intimate with is sensitivity does get you far in life. And although there's a lot more self-doubt and although there's a lot more wishy-washiness, tapping into the heart of a situation really allows you to move forward because of skills like empathy, which Capricorn and Saturn really struggle to develop because it's all about blocking out external stimulus and charging forward over time in order to achieve a result. All feelings want is to feel good, yeah, and to share company and empathy with people when bad feelings are present. So if you're able to respect that spot in your chart, understand how your friends, your coworkers, and your significant others are trying to pull you into that space, not to drag you down to the depths, but to help you taste the emotional experience so that you can master it this time around. That's really where your chart is heading, my dear, and I wish you all the best luck with it. As somebody who's a triple water sign, I can definitely help you navigate some of those stuffs. Good morning, Michelle. Good morning, Monica. Good morning, Cusmano. Good morning, Brandon. Good morning, everybody on Instagram. I love you. Love you, baby. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to our second chart of the morning. We've got Jane, Jaein, Jane. 4 a.m. in Westwood as well. Let's take a peek at the chart from this perspective. So we've also got a Capricorn ascendant, absolutely hilarious. I'm enjoying that. So we've got this time Neptune and Uranus in the first house of self. That Neptune and Uranus does without Venus and Capricorn. I think Neptune and Uranus in the first house of self have a little bit more wiggle room and playroom. Also in this chart, the ascendant's at 21 degrees, Neptune's at 24 degrees, Uranus is at 28. So there's a much closer orb with those outer planets, which tend to have a wide orb anyway. When we look at Neptune and Uranus being in the first house and them being in Capricorn, that sign where they don't necessarily operate too well, I think there's a lot of pressure that Jane puts on themselves, like the idea of, I'd like to explore these things, I'd like to be spontaneous and shake it up, but there's a sense of Capricornian guilt that just gets boom stamped right on the self. And depending on Capricorn's placement, yep. Oh, Jane, what? What is this nonsense? We have the sun in Pisces at 14 degrees in the third house of writing, teaching, communication. But we also, get this, y'all, we also have Saturn in Pisces in a freaking Kazemi conjoining at 14 degrees almost exactly Oh, wow. That is absolutely crazy. So we've got some serious Capricorn, Neptunian, Piscean vibes happening in the chart where there's this rock part of the self where it's just I am mountain, I am hard, I am not going to take no shit from nobody. And then we have this Piscean flowy, I'm just going to go with the vibes of the situation and I'm going to allow it to fuel my art and my spiritual progress. And I'm going to shed a few tears and allow myself to karmically heal from this. And I will still be a badass boss bitch. And so this connection between first house Capricorn placements, third house Sun, Saturn, Kazemi, I think that that's something that really puts Jane into the poetry category, the artistry category, especially when it comes to spoken word poetry, because third house is writing, teaching, communication. When we have that ruling the ascendant, very, very important connection there, but also the sun, the planet of ego in the sign of Pisces, which is naturally very spiritual, very artistic in that third house of writing, teaching, communication, conjoining the Lord of the ascendant. There's a lot of very hard lessons, but hard lessons that can be transformed into beautiful art, especially art that revolves around the spoken word in Jane's chart. We also have the moon in Taurus at 0 degrees. That's fascinating. So the moon at like almost exactly 0 degrees. So 0 degrees, 4 seconds into the sign of Taurus, 4 clicks in. The South Node is also here in Taurus in the fifth house. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Oh, there's a really interesting progression in Jane's chart. Um, oh, I like where this is going a lot. I like where this is going because I'm talking about all the artistry stuff, but then we have the South Node and Moon in that fifth house of creativity. South Node is the energy suck of the chart. It's where we're actually moving away from. It's past life stuff. We've already mastered this. And instead, we're catapulting up into the 11th house of friendships, communities, tribes, large groups, where the North Node is and the MC is the highest point of the chart, the midheaven, and then we have uh, Mars and Leo ruling that space, and then we have Venus in the second house ruling that fifth house moon. Ooh, I like this, Jane. I like what your chart is telling me because in the past you've already learned how to master this creativity. It comes very easily to you. It's not something that you need to effort with or try with. It is a big part of yourself, but I think this is where the Capricorn comes in, and I think this is why you've strategically placed it so close to your ascendant and your sun, is because this time around you're here to share your work with the community. In fact, maybe even in a teaching role, because we have that Venus in Aquarius in the second of finance ruling that fifth house moon, and then we also have Gemini or Mercury in Aquarius in the second house of finance ruling that ninth house of higher education. I really like the idea that you would not just be taking this art and becoming an artist, or specifically spoken word and working with writing, teaching, communication. But I think you catapulting yourself onto the main stage, sharing your work more publicly with the world, really allowing yourself to overcome some of the confidence barriers in your chart and sticking it to the people who would rather keep facts and experiences hidden, sharing some very, very personal stuff, especially surrounding death, surrounding business, estates, taxes, all of those eighth house topics that your Mars and Leo retrograde really wants to speak about. Yeah, that's a fascinating chart, Jane. I'm really interested to see how you develop in that direction because there's so much that you could do with these placements, but all of that creativity that you've kind of come in with is naturally tempered and hampered, but you overcoming that and spreading your work with the world is truly the joy of the chart, is a good way to think about it. Excellent. Lovely. Thank you everybody who's jumping on. I appreciate uh, all of the messages, just scrolling through comments. Hey, Tony. Hey, Rachel. Hey, everybody on Instagram. Love you so much. We're on chart number 3, and we got to go to Nate. Nate, what's up? 3:13 p.m. in Manchester. Sag Stellium in the 7th house. Very nice. Very nice. I enjoy it. Um, making a square to Pisces moon in the 10th. So we've got some career issues. Oh, yes, and that Pluto, South Node, Mars, all in Scorpio in the sixth. That's crazy, Nate. You've decided to do some really interesting work in the career space this time around. Not sure if I'm a fan of it. Not sure if I'm a fan of it. Um, yeah, wow, absolutely crazy. So let's talk about this Sag stellium. You have Sagittarius Sun in here. You also have Uranus Sagittarius, Venus Sagittarius, Mercury Sagittarius, which is ruling your Gemini ascendant. And we have the 3-degree Saturn in Sagittarius. That's 5 personal planets in Sagittarius, in case you can't do math like me. So when we look at the 7th house of relationships, you've put almost all of your eggs in this basket. It's a really big part of who you are as a person. In fact, your a large portion of your life is dominated by the thought of who is my mate. Yeah, what am I doing in a relationship? Not from a bad way, but like what am I doing in this relationship? How am I catering to them? What am I doing with them? So much of your charts just pulls us back into that spousal relationship house. It's crazy how much of your life you've devoted to the study of relationships is a good way to think about it. But when we look at your sixth house of work, health, pets, first and foremost, having Mars here, Pluto here, both signs associated with Scorpio in Scorpio, we need to be very aware from a medical astrology perspective of the Scorpio body systems. That's going to be large intestine, bladder, sinus, as well as reproductive. Those are areas that you're going to need to view as temperature body systems. So when those body systems specifically start to act up symptom wise, you are way off balance, my friend, in terms of where you need to be health wise. So just be aware of that. Not to mention that we naturally have gut inflammation because Mars and Scorpio in the sixth does that. Okay. But from a work perspective, you've chosen to do some really interesting things. But those things directly conflict with your relationship stuff. So I think one of the struggles of your chart is we have this moon in Pisces at 11 degrees making a sign based trine to all of this work Scorpio stuff where you're really working with a lot of emotion. You're really working with a lot of spirituality. Detective work would be excellent for you. FBI work, anything that you have to go undercover, absolutely flawless for you. You have the intuitive skills in order to do that, like massive intuitive skills when it comes to your workspace stuff. Like borderline telepathic, it creeps people out. But we know that you're just empathetic because they don't necessarily have that emotional intelligence that you do. So much emotional intelligence in the workspace. But when it comes to the relationship stuff, there's this Sagittarius energy that comes forward. And it's like, let's play, let's express, let's have fun. And you're like, I literally just saw 3 people die today. Yeah. Hmm. Physically or metaphorically, doesn't matter. But all that Scorpio Pisces energy, like it's a total I see dead people vibe. And so you take all this heavy, emotional, watery stuff from work and you try to bring that home to the relationships, honey. It's gonna be there's gonna be a lot of steam that comes from that. When fire meets water, that's kind of what happens. And you've stacked so much energy into your relationships and your work, but they're conflicting in your chart. So we need to do a little bit of remediation from that. And I think one of the things that you're going to need to learn how to balance is this 12th house north node in Taurus, where you're really stepping up to the plate and saying, look, there are certain things that I can share with you, and there are certain things that I cannot share with you. You're going to have to deal with that. I have a secret part of my life that I cannot share because if I did, I would be a blubbery mess. You would be a blubbery mess, and it would steal away from this Sagittarius fun that we're about to have. Right? That's not a bad thing. But instead, as you start to learn and grow, especially with this Jupiter conjoined the midheaven at 15 degrees exactly in the ninth house of higher learning, there's so much that you can bring to the table and bring to the equation that is not your work. However, you still need to process these two worlds separately and individually. So make sure that you're seeking a therapist for your work stuff, especially if things get way, way, way emotionally out of hand. And then also let's really study a lot about relationships if you haven't already. Let's do cultural studies. Let's do men's studies, let's do women's studies, let's investigate the idea of chemistry, let's do a lot of delving into that 7th house spousal topic. Yeah. Um, Yeah, that's pretty much your chart. You've put so much stuff in just a couple houses. There's ain't nothing much else than that, honey Nate. So I appreciate you. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and keep this ball a rolling. Bam! Let's talk about Stephen. Stephen, my Ferdinand. Let's go. May 1st. We've got Rochester is the place of birth. Oh, cute. We have that ascendant at 29 degrees, 54 seconds in. That birth time better be exact as hell, because you are right on that edge. So much so that we would put you slightly in Sagittarius category. But we have that ascendant in Scorpio plus a Pluto in Scorpio. Anytime Pluto's in the first house, there is a touch of the occult, the underworld, the shadow, Hades, Persephone, that myth. Absolutely love it. Fantastic. But as a true note, with Pluto in the first house, you've chosen to identify with those deeper underworld themes. The self will also not fully mature until halfway through the life. This is something that I talk to all of my Pluto in the first house clients with, is really your life doesn't start, your personal power doesn't truly start to be honed until 50. Yeah, it's a level 50 planet. You put it in the first house of self. What are you going to do? So that's that. We also have the sun opposing this Pluto, so like I get it. You want to be the stereotypical Taurus that dotes on the lover and cooks for them and creates this nice nest of a home. And there's this Mercury in Taurus here, so there's creative partnership with the lover, and so there's this nice I'm just going to be the supportive one, and I'm going to be, really mentally engaged by my partner and all this nonsense. However, honey, this is directly opposing this Pluto and Scorpio. We need to respect the underworld just a little bit more in terms of self-esteem. Because yes, the sun talks about self-esteem and self-worth and self-value, the radiant qualities of the sun. However, when it comes to finding yourself, your essence, who you are as a person, Pluto is closer than any relationship ever will be. Because when it comes to astrology, what's put in that first house box is who you are. The sun is how you choose to exercise that sense of self, how you choose to provide for your people, especially with Taurus on that sun and that Mercury in that seventh house. But you are not a Taurus, honey. You are a Scorpio in disguise, and we must recognize that. Act Taurian, be Taurian, love Taurian, fantastic. But when it comes to you actually being you, slink down to the depths where you belong. That is definitely something to be aware of. Take that under advisement. Stephanie, write that down. Um, let's see, what else do we got? Oh yeah, one of the highest expressions of your chart is to actually work with a partner, because we've got this Venus and Aries conjoin the North Node ruling that seventh house. Like it would give you no greater pleasure than to. This is probably where you get like that impulse to join a family-based business. Is because when you partner with somebody not just in life but also in work, it scratches this itch in your soul that you cannot possibly explain to others, because this part of your chart is so connected to your relationship house, and your destiny, really. So when it comes to exercising your North Node capabilities, there's just so much that needs to be paired and stacked together, and one of those things is your relationship with your work. Yeah, so that's fulfillment. It doesn't always have to be that way, but I'm telling you now that if it's not that way, you're going to feel restless and anxious. Speaking of restless and anxious, let's talk about your Gemini moon. We've got this Gemini moon at 27 degrees paired with Mars in Gemini in the eighth house of death, taxes, estates, and business. There is an entrepreneurial spirit here with the moon in Gemini, especially Mars in Gemini. There is a go-getter attitude, which is sometimes in conflict with this Sun and Mercury Taurus in the seventh, which is why, again, don't get attached to this lovey-dovey part of you. Like, it is a part of you, but it's not the only part of you. You are multifaceted with this moon in Gemini. You have to respect your extremes. You're not clinically bipolar, is a good way to think about it. And this is something with heavy Gemini placements that I always have to let people know. Like, you feel things on a greater extreme scale than most people. Some people only have a heart that can go from this extreme to this extreme. Your heart can go from that extreme to that extreme. That doesn't make you That doesn't make you lesser, that especially when you compare yourself to other Taurians, that's where you get really confused. This doesn't make you lesser of a Taurus. It means that your moon is in Gemini and you should act accordingly. You should feel accordingly. You should really allow yourself to be taken by the inspiration of all these creative endeavors that you've stuck into the chart. But again, that Mercury in Taurus ruling the eighth house of business and that Mercury being in the seventh house, you're doubling down on this idea that you should be in business with your partner. It's just a thing. It's a thing that must happen. You have demanded it. Let's see. What do we want to do? Working with potentially estates, taxes, in the business realm. You'd be a great business consultant. Yeah, Jupiter in Aries ruled by Mars in the eighth. That's a thing. Finances are tricky. Finances are very tricky. You should get somebody else to do your finances. We've got Saturn in Sagittarius. I don't like to see Saturn in the second house, especially not in Sagittarius, a mutable sign that tends to spend like the Dickens anyway. Saturn is also retrograde, going backwards. We have Uranus, another outer planet known for unpredictability, in Sagittarius, spends like the Dickens, and retrograde as well. So we have these two planets in your financial house, although you can work very, very hard. And that's a big part of what you pride yourself on too, is being a hard worker. The money issues need to be understood too. We need to understand specifically that just because you surrender your money to somebody else does not mean that you are less prosperous. It doesn't mean that you are failing at life. It doesn't mean that you are a bad person. But instead, you are strategically letting somebody else who is better at the things that you are not good at handle those things. Yeah, it's called delegating. Learn it. Yeah, I think that's it. Everything past that is just looping back into the same lessons over and over. So we have come to the end of your chart, good Stephen. Thank you so much for donating your chart to science. We will move on at this point. Okay. Yes. Definitely learning that. Cool. Lovely. Alrighty. So we are about halfway through. Now is time for me to do some shameless self-promotion. If you have enjoyed these clips and you would like to send me a little bit of a donation, you can always send them to sam@scorpiorisingastrology.com via PayPal, or you can buy a class, schedule an online consult. Just visit my website, www.scorpiorisingastrology.com. Check out the YouTube channel. Check me out on TikTok, Instagram, especially if you're not seeing my daily forecasts. Because Facebook algorithms are bullshit, and Instagram is much more reliable with that. So that's my plug. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Let's go to Erickson. Erickson was born at 6:58 a.m. in Franklin. We've got a Sagittarius ascendant with the sun in Sagittarius. So when we have the ascendant in one sign and the sun or the moon in the same sign, we call them a double whatever that sign is. So as an example, I have my sun and my moon in Cancer, so I am a double Cancer. Erickson has ascendant and sun in Sagittarius, making him a double Sagittarius. But then we also have this Aquarius side, which I think is really interesting and where we get some of the zany qualities. Sagittarius is that mutable fire sign, which is known for being impulsive, reckless, changeable, very charismatic. Some people say that Leo is the most charismatic sign. I'd say Leo is the most commanding sign. Sagittarius for me is the most charismatic sign because they have this childlike, giddy glow to them that just makes people laugh and gets people to, it sugarcoats people. And I really enjoy that. But when we have this Mars in Aquarius, Moon in Aquarius in the third house, you've got this really interesting combo of fire and air, which I enjoy, Erickson. I think that the Aquarius side of you lends some zaniness. It lends some even more unpredictability. It really lets people say like, oh, wow, you're fun. Like you're fun on all levels. Fun can quickly escalate because of that Mars in Aquarius, but because you've put the Moon and Mars in the third house, there is a strong flavor of the chart that relates to writing, teaching, speaking, communication, that kind of stuff. So if you're not doing some form of writing, teaching, speaking, I would highly encourage that you do it because it does fuel your chart. Let's look at where the Lord of the chart is. Ooh, the Lord of the chart, Mr. Jupiter, is in Virgo up in the 10th. MC is here, Pluto is here, Uranus is here. That's tricky, honey. That's tricky. Not only is Jupiter at 5 degrees squaring the ascendant, making an exact square of the ascendant. So this is where the ascendant, which is our major personality marker, the ascendant tells us who somebody is at the core of their being. And then the Lord of the ascendant, which represents the native. It represents that personality embodied in the chart. Erickson has put Jupiter up in the 10th house of success. There's a natural aura of a radiance, of a projection of regality, of I'm good at this. And even though there is conflict between the self and the personality, there is still an objective sense that whatever Erickson does, they will be great at it. But we need to talk about this square. One of the things that tends to happen between Lord of the chart from the 10th squaring the ascendant in the first is a distraction principle, where it's this idea of Erickson's Jupiter in Virgo making a square to the ascendant in Sagittarius. Ascendant in Sag just really wants to have a good time and bounce around. Yeah, they want to go on a quest for the holy goddamn grail. Whereas Jupiter in Virgo would prefer to edit, would prefer to not do those things because they're impractical. They're definitely not on the to-do list for today's moving towards success plan. And this flip chart that the self-dictated, nowhere on there is there this thing you call play, right? So we have this idea of being personally scattered when it comes to achieving long-term goals, and that's going to be a distraction principle. In fact, I would highly recommend you look up the TED Talk on procrastination. I think that that's a really funny and accurate and valuable thing that you would need to master. But this part of you isn't going to be mastered until half the life, because we have the midheaven conjoining exactly Pluto at 22 degrees and Uranus here as well, outer planets in the 10th house. There's going to be a lot of time before the maturation of this sense of duty, this sense of diligence, this sense of I must accomplish really takes over the chart. And that fun side, which is very, very present in the first part of the life, tends to die down, and the forest fire, which is burning out of control, starts to turn into a nice, manageable hearth that can be channeled into things that are productive. You've got this really interesting charisma in your chart, Erickson. This Venus in Libra in the 11th house. I really enjoy that placement because Venus in Libra in her correct sign does bring a sense of beauty, a sense of effortless goddess energy into that 11th house of friendships, tribes, and social groups. However, we do have the South Node here, so we need to understand that you are not necessarily here to make friends, although when we look at your ability to make friends, it is very easy. Instead, we need to be focused on that 5th house topic of the North Node, which is going to be that creative expression. That creative expression in the 5th house, being ruled by that Mars in the 3rd, does tell me that, again, back to that writing, teaching, communication, you really should take some English classes, understand diction, start to write poetry if you're not doing that already, read other poets, read short stories, learn how to edit, learn how to take words out, refine sentence structure, work with language in a way that really allows you to tap into some more purposeful places in the chart, because you putting those skills to work is really what's going to activate those higher placements, as opposed to just having fun with this ascendant sun in Sag combo in the 1st. So yeah, that's that. Yes, the rest we would need to talk one-on-one about, but I think that's a good summary of the chart. Hello, everybody jumping on. Thank you so much for commenting. If you would like to be a part of the queue, just send in your birth date, place, and exact birth time. I do need that exact birth time. For those of you who are overseas, not in America, I do need you to spell out the month and the day. I get those confused because, again, 4-5, does that mean April 5th or is that May 4th? I don't know. So please spell them out. Okay, moving on to the next chart. We have 3 more to go. Let's talk about Miss Jessica. Miss Jessica Crew. We have 12:34 p.m. in New York. Yeah. Let's go ahead and look at this Leo ascendant. Love a good Leo ascendant. This Leo ascendant is being ruled by the sun in Taurus in the 10th, Mercury in Taurus in the 10th, moon in Taurus in the 10th. Girl, you're beautiful. Girl, I love this. This is so cute. So cute. So this ascendant, again, the ascendant is the major personality marker of the chart. It tells us who we are. And Leo loves to be flamboyant, dramatic. They have an eye for talent. They really appreciate people who shine and sparkle. You want a good reference for a Leo, although it has Cancer overtones, the idea of Kanatoa, I think it was, the crab from Moana. That's Leo. Yeah, so we have the ascendant being ruled by the sun, and that tells us who Jessica is as a person. Sun in Taurus is a very sustainable energy for that sun to be present in. It is one of those signs that I really enjoy seeing the sun in, just because that radiance is benevolent as opposed to a little bit more projective and harsh during some other times of the year. Think about the sun being where we are right now, where spring is. Spring, between spring and summer, Taurus comes up and really starts to say, hey, I'm going to give you just enough light in order to bloom, but I'm not going to fricking burn you. And that's totally a thing. But because we have Venus, the ruler of Taurus, in Taurus, her home sign, and the sun in Taurus, or the moon in Taurus, the moon in its exaltation in Taurus, co-present with Venus, just blowing my mind. All of this lovely success marker in the 10th house. I can't get over it, Jessica. Like, you've decided I'm famous. That's it. That's who I am. I am literally a celebrity. God damn it. And that's very much who you've chosen to be. However, we do have conflict. Let's talk about this conflict because it's a big conflict. We have the ascendant in Leo directly opposing Saturn in Aquarius, directly at 17 degrees opposing Saturn and Aquarius in the 7th house of relationships. These relationships can go one of 2 ways. One, they are suffocating, absolutely suffocating. The minute that you attach yourself to somebody, it literally feels like a ball and chain. Yeah, because they just hamper your style. We need to understand sometimes that is a good thing. Yes, this is something that will potentially be learned once that Saturn return happens at 30. However, in the meantime, we do need to respect that all of this beauty, all of this success up in your 10th house, where you've put so much of your energy, is directly contradicted by who you choose as a partner. And those contradictions, although they can steal the breath from your lungs, yeah, they can also take your breath away in a good way. And they can really stop you from over Taurusing, from over succeeding, from stretching beyond your means, which is something that Taurus tends to do rather frequently. So just be aware that although oppression is something that your default relationship status will include, that oppression is often coming from the highest good, not necessarily the view that a Taurus would take of, get off my land. Okay. Yeah, we're going to go deep for 2 seconds, Jessica, because I think that you need it. So please brace yourself for this next statement. One of the reasons why you spend so much time trying to be successful and be this ideal version of beauty is because you can't run away from your home life hard enough. And this is something that we see a lot. You've got Pluto in Scorpio retrograde in the 4th house of family, giving us a huge toxic energy for the first half of the life in the house of family. And that opposing all of the moon, the sun, the Venus up in the 10th house. It really speaks to me of, you've tried to separate yourself so much from the people that you grew up around. You literally cannot run away hard enough from that situation. And I think that that's a driving force. Everybody has baggage. Don't be ashamed of it. But just recognize, the soil that you grow up in does not necessarily dictate the flower that you bloom into. honey. That is some grade A pearl of wisdom that I have just tossed in your direction, channeled directly from spirit. So yeah, chew on that. Let's go ahead and take a look at some other factors in the chart. We've already talked about the idea of working with a spouse in previous charts. This is the same in your chart. We have Saturn in Aquarius ruling the sixth house of work from the seventh house of relationships. The North Node is here in Capricorn, as well as Neptune and Uranus here, working in fantasy production, working in medicine, but like anesthesia medicine, working with, what would be some other fun careers? Working in fashion, yeah, but working with a spouse, specifically working with that spouse who tends to adopt those Saturn and Aquarius qualities for sure. And we have this Mercury in Aries. I think that I don't I don't like to see too much Taurus and Aries in the same chart because Aries is stubborn, Taurus is stubborn. People often think that Taurus is the most stubborn sign until they've met a quality Aries. And to have that Mercury in Aries with all these Taurus placements, you have to understand that sometimes in order to save a relationship, you do need to get off your high horse. Yeah. You personally have a lot of really good ideas. You have a lot of really good charisma, but that doesn't mean that you are right all the time, honey. That is from me to you with as much compassion as I can muster as a double Cancer. I truly feel like there is this part of you that would just keep bulldozing forward until the world ends. And sometimes it does help, and it does not make you weak in order to say, wow, you're right. That's a much better way to say that. Or, wow, you're right. I totally didn't mean it that way. Or, wow, you're right. I did hurt you and I wasn't thinking of your feelings. Okay, so as a final note, just some stuff for you to work on. But big fan of your chart. Hi, everybody. Jumping on. Thank you so much for watching the stream. Jane, Ash, everybody jumping on. We are moving on to our next chart, which is going to be Monica. Hey, Monica. How you doing, girl? Monica, born 8:01 a.m. in Houston. Okay. Mm. Mm-mm-mm. Speaking of not being able to run away hard enough. Okay, Monica. So we've got this Sagittarius ascendant at 8 degrees. Mars is also in Sagittarius at 10, Mercury at Sagittarius 16, Neptune in Sagittarius at 17. That's what I would consider a stellium, 4 or more planetary alignments in the same house. Makes you very, very Sagittarius oriented, but in a way that I'm not super thrilled with. Having Mars here to give you fire, having Mercury here to give you speed, and Neptune here to give you fantasy, paired with the fact that Jupiter is ruling your chart. Jupiter is up in Leo in that ninth house of travel, foreigners, higher education, all things that you would need to travel to get to. The big lesson that I'd like to just throw down as a pavement, as a slab to build all the rest of your chart on is you take you wherever you go. Yeah. So it really doesn't matter where you run to. At the end of the day, after traveling all over the world, something that you're going to realize after you get over the scenery and the cultural differences is people are just people, no matter where you go. Yeah, same themes. They might be wrapped up in different packaging, but it's going to be the same stuff over and over and over. Hate to burst your bubble. Enjoy it. Have fun. Love life. Sagittarius loves life. Ruled by Jupiter and Leo in the ninth. Get out of here. Travel, foreigners, higher education. You're all about it, girlfriend. I get you. But we cannot escape the personal work that you're supposed to be doing in this lifetime. Yep. Speaking of that personal work that you're supposed to be doing in this lifetime, but directly opposed against, is actually managing yourself and other people. We have this Saturn in Virgo, midheaven in Virgo, North Node in Virgo, all in the 10th house, which is making sign-based square to all of your Sagittarius stuff. I know that you don't see it, and I know that this isn't something that you personally enjoy doing, but there's this piece of you, yeah, there's this piece of you that is very good at spotting fine details. And that's the piece of you that can also be very, very, very helpful to other people. And the way in which you are helpful to other people. You have markers for working with severe trauma in your chart. You have markers for working in the travel industry, putting together excursions for people, working in health, working in like many different other fields. Like your chart is really versatile from a work perspective. But I think what we need to understand is work does not always need to be fun. Yeah, you don't always need to do what you love in order to get paid. Yeah. And in fact, the things that you're good at specifically will pay you, but you may not necessarily enjoy them. They may bring out parts of yourself that you're not as familiar with, but other people really appreciate. Yeah. So just because you don't think that you would be good at a job does not mean that you would not be good at it. I would encourage you to apply for it anyway. Here's an exercise that I tell a lot of my clients to do when it comes to the self esteem markers that we're seeing in your chart, which we'll talk about in a minute. Ask your friends and ask your family, what do you think I should do for a living? What job do you think I would be good at? Yeah. They will tell you because they can see your strengths in a way that you cannot. Yeah. So that's something important just to look at in terms of the self esteem issues. And another reason why you shouldn't be the judge of you, period, is because we have Venus and Scorpio, Uranus and Scorpio, and the Sun in Scorpio all in the 12th house. There is this hidden energy to your chart that I think really diminishes your sense of self to the degree of you love to have fun. You've got all this flamboyant nature in your chart with all this Sagittarius Leo stuff. Yeah, especially with the moon and Gemini in the 7th, the love to be loved. But when it comes to you loving you, when it comes to you spotting your own value and worth, that's to be desired. So when who are you to tell you what you can or cannot do? Boo boo. Yeah. So let's make sure that you're stepping up your game, really allowing other people to tell you your skill set, and not necessarily like in a dogmatic way, like you should do this, but in a helpful, supportive way, like I really think you'd be good at this, instead of you jumping to conclusions, because jumping to conclusions, as we know from my TikTok video, jumping to conclusions does not count as exercise, and that is something that you're prone to do in the chart, Monica. So stew over some of those concepts, watch this a couple times because I know you need it, and let's activate some of your hidden talents and use other people as the support structure that they deserve instead of you trying to run hard, run far, run fast away from who you actually are. Good stuff. And I'm getting tons of notes from everybody. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Absolutely love everybody jumping on. And yeah, let's continue to go down the chart list. I think we only have one more, but we're almost at an hour anyway. Okie dokie, let's talk about Ash. Hey, Ash Ketchum. Sorry, I'm a huge Pokemon nerd. We have 11:31 a.m. in Thomasville is the birth info. Let's take a peek. We've got this Virgo ascendant, Mercury ruling the chart up in Cancer, and oh, Cancer and the Sun and the Lord of the chart. Oh, honey, all this compassion. You really just care way too much. Way too much. Crazy town, how much you care. So we've got Mercury in Cancer. Mercury is the planet of the mind. Mercury really allows us to look into the chart and see how somebody thinks. And when we find Mercury in Cancer, there is somebody whose brain literally revolves around how can I take care of this person? This is also up in the 11th house of friendships, tribes, and social groups. Ash would be great in hospitality. Absolutely magnificent. Mwah. Especially higher levels of hospitality, because we've got this moon in Libra down in the 2nd. Fancy. So fancy. But that Sun in Cancer up in the 11th, like really, really warms Ash's heart in order to just be surrounded by the tribe. But also to take care of the tribe. It wouldn't surprise me if you host a lot of open houses, constantly are the one who's taking care of friends. You are totally the mom friend. And I say that affectionately without gender stereotypes. Guys can be the mom friend, girls are the mom friend. Like, it's a thing. But anybody who has Sun in Cancer in the 11th, You're the frickin' mom friend. Then we have, again, this moon in Libra, which is just absolutely lovely. Tends to play devil's advocate a little bit too much, leads to some indecisions. We need to pick a partner who has, and unfortunately, this isn't what you tend to do. We need to pick a partner who is a little bit more decisive than you, somebody who is able to offer up their opinion and understands that you are almost physically incapable of offering up your own opinion, unless it is criticizing or critiquing or editing what is already there because of that Virgo ascendant. We need to just recognize that your heart is a little bit too big for you to be the leader in the relationship. Instead, we need somebody else who's able to step up and kind of hash out a plan of action, and you come in with secondary advice to hash out that plan of action. When it comes to that relationship as well, we've got Pisces ruling the seventh house of relationships. The lord of that house is Jupiter and Gemini up in the 10th house. One of your biggest turn-ons from a relationship perspective is fame and career success. Somebody who is not successful in what they do cannot be bothered with it. Cannot be bothered with it, because success is the mark of true value when it comes to a spouse, in your opinion. We've got some creative toxicity. Not necessarily a fan of that. You've chosen to do some interesting things with your planets. So we've got Neptune in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn, Uranus in Capricorn, all retrograde in the 5th house of children, of parents, of sexuality, of creativity. That 5th house is severely stifled. So we have too much discipline, we have too much restriction, we have too much backwards tendencies when it comes to this house. So notice how, again, your idea of parenting, your idea of children, your idea of creativity, sexuality may be repressed in ways that needs to be unlocked a little bit, just a little bit for sure. And I think part of that is, you choose to give to others and you're waiting for that command. And then the command from other people tells you how you should behave on a subconscious level, but you can't really make that decision for yourself in terms of your own creative drive, your own creative effort. So we need to rely a little bit less on the people around us and a little bit more on what we can do for ourselves. That will actually turn on your partner more than anything, is to stand up for yourself and make a decision and claim creative space over what you're interested in. Yes. We do have Venus and Mars in Leo in the 12th house, ruled by that sun in Cancer. I think one of the things that we need to respect about your chart is hidden gender issues. Whenever we see Venus and Mars together, co-present in the same house, I always see gender issues, bisexuality, some issue with the masculine, feminine coming together. But specifically here, we have the South Node and the 12th house, the house of hidden enemies, and the point of the chart where energy is drained. So I think a lot of your subconscious energies revolve around this idea of potential gender identity, sexuality, and those Mars, Venus, feminine, masculine polarities, which kind of play out in your subconscious. That might be a place for you to ask for help as well as to give help. It might be a really soulful part of your chart to work with that population, but also to study that population for your own knowledge, and allow people, especially friends, the friends that you've cared for, step in and allow them to help you manage that hidden part of the chart. Jace. What else? What else? Yeah, that Pluto and Scorpio retrograde, you've put that in your 3rd house of writing, teaching, communication. Wouldn't surprise me if, especially in high school or growing up, you had a lisp, some speech impediment, or that Pluto and Scorpio really made it so that you curse too much, or you used words in a way that were toxic to those around you, and you're really not going to master words until about halfway through life. So just understand that miscommunication is totally a thing, which is why acts of service is your love language, which is why you love to take care of people. But because you love to take care of people so much, it's why you also don't make decisions for yourself. But we need to get you to make decisions for yourself, because that's what's going to attract the people that you love and work with all this 12th house mystery in terms of Venus, Mars, co-presence. Jace. Cool. And that is Ash's chart. Lovely. Thank you, everybody, for coming to my live stream. I appreciate you very, 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 very much. Would not be able to do it without you, obviously. Thank you for your support. If you would like to be in the queue for this, just send in your birth date, place, and exact birth time, and I will add you to the queue. It is a long list, but I do have a list, and I will message you directly on the platform that you message me on with those details to let you know when that morning, where you are in the queue. All of this is recorded. I put this up on YouTube. It's on the Facebook page, the replays as well. If you have any additional questions, feel free to check out my website. Sam at ScorpioRisingAstrology.com is the email, and do online classes, private consults, yada, yada, having fun with some TikTok videos. And until next time, may the stars be ever in your favor. Mwah.